Now that the impeachment trial of Donald Trump has ended with 57 senators voting to convict, 43 voting not to convict, I'd like to share some thoughts about what the vote means and what this means for our future as a nation, the United States. First of all, the 57 vote margin means that for the first time in the history of the nation, a former president has been convicted or been uh, tried for impeachment. That's historic. The first time a former president has been tried for impeachment on an impeachment charge. Secondly, the most bipartisan vote in favor of conviction in the history of presidential impeachments occurred in this case. The first time a former president is tried and happens to be the largest bipartisan vote. 7 Republican senators voted along with 50 Democratic senators. Third, even though the minority leader, Senator McConnell, said that afterwards he was convinced that Donald Trump incited the insurrection, that he worked for weeks pursuing this false narrative, ginning up his supporters, that when the insurrection happened, he didn't try to call it off, and when the Senate and the House were stormed, he cheered the people on, encouraged them on, and he took no effort to protect the Senate, the House, or the Vice President. Even though Mitch McConnell admitted that, Mitch McConnell voted against conviction, claiming that the Senate had no jurisdiction. Of course, the Senate had already voted that it did have jurisdiction earlier in the week. So let's dissect that. Jurisdiction is about power. Jurisdiction is simply a political and legal word that means power. And if you have no power to do something, you don't go ahead and do it and then decide after you've done it that you couldn't do it because you didn't have power to do it. Once you have decided you have power to do it, you go and decide what you're going to do. And then you have a vote on what you did means. The Senate trial happened because the Senate had conviction to have a trial, had jurisdiction to have a trial. There is no jurisdiction to have a non-trial. So what Mitch McConnell said was simply, well, yeah, fluff. That's a nice word. That's a nice word. And I understand that. Mitch McConnell is a lawyer by training. He's a politician by career. I'm a lawyer by training. I know how politicians and lawyers think. And quite frankly, I understand what Mr. McConnell is doing. He's basically trying to cover. This is what you call backfill. You're basically trying to cover the mess you made. Because Mitch McConnell has a problem. Mitch McConnell has two problems, really. Number one, he has a serious problem with credibility. The whole world saw Donald Trump over a series of months tell the world that he thought that the only way he could lose re-election would be if the election was rigged or his victory was stolen. And then the world saw Donald Trump repeat that lie again and again and again and do everything he could to sow the seeds of suspicion on his followers who believe that Donald Trump had to win the election or the election would not be legitimate. It's almost like if they had the Super Bowl and the losing team Super Bowl says, the only way I can lose Super Bowl is if I lose. But if I lose, I've been cheated. And therefore, the only way I can lose is be cheated. Otherwise, I'll win because I cannot lose on the field. Donald Trump lost on the field. He didn't want to believe he lost on the field. He spent months saying he could not believe he would lose on the field. When he lost on the field, he said he didn't lose on the field. And then he told his supporters that because he did not want to believe he lost on the field, they should not believe he lost on the field. They should believe he was robbed because he had been telling the world he could not believe he could lose unless he'd been robbed. Mitch McConnell basically said that Donald Trump's big lie was a big lie, and that the big lie resulted in the insurrection against the Capitol, and that Donald Trump was the ringleader of it. Factually, that's what this impeachment is about. Where do we stand now? Well, the Senate as an institution stands in some trouble because for the first time in the history of the Republic, we have the United States Senate having refused to convict somebody from inciting an insurrection against the United States. When the Senate witnessed the insurrection, the Senate has an institutional problem. So does the House of Representatives, the Republican side, because they were witnesses too, and they have an institutional problem. 7 Republican patriots, and I mean this statement sincerely, we may disagree with them on their political leanings, but let no one question their patriotism. These 7 Republicans voted to convict because, like Mitch McConnell, they saw Donald Trump's conduct as being inexcusable and subversive to democracy. And they knew that when they voted to convict, Donald Trump's rabid followers would turn against them, would try to vilify them, but they did it anyway. Let me say a word about the House managers. The House managers did a super job presenting all the evidence of Donald Trump's lies that incited the insurrection. For weeks, they proved Donald Trump's lies resulted in the insurrection, that the insurrection followed Donald Trump's lies. They proved the effect of the insurrection, the death, the carnage, the injuries. They proved the relationship between Donald Trump's lies and those results. And they proved that Donald Trump has no remorse. To this day, Donald Trump does not admit that he lied and does not admit that he lost. The House managers did their job. I would like to say that Donald Trump's lawyers served him, let me simply say, they served him in a manner consistent with his own conduct. How do I characterize it? Buffoonery? Chicanery? Sophistry? Absurdity? Clownish? I would simply say that as trial advocates, Donald Trump's lawyers were about as effective as Donald Trump's presidency was. Uh, and so they deserved each other, but Donald Trump's lawyers did not win a result. Mitch McConnell admitted that Donald Trump's conduct was as the House manager said. So Donald Trump's lawyers did not disprove what the House managers alleged and what the House representatives accused him of. Donald Trump's lawyers simply put on a clown show. And what do you get with a clown show? You get a farce. Let me ask you this. If you had a choice between hiring Donald Trump's lawyers or the House managers, which lawyers would you hire? I suggest you'd hire every day of the week the House managers and twice on Sunday. And you wouldn't hire Donald Trump's lawyers because you wouldn't think you'd want to hire people who would treat your case like a joke. Now, you may be saying that they did the best they could with what they had. Perhaps they did what they did because that was what they had, but let me suggest to you it wasn't the best they could what they had. I won't go into what better more they could have done. Let me simply say this. Uh, they didn't have to do any more given that the last point of what I'm going to talk about is so real. What this case really proves, what this case really proves is that there are 43 United States senators who care more about themselves than they care about this nation. Do not be mistaken. 43 United States senators said by their votes either that the Senate does not have jurisdiction to try a former president who, during the course of his presidency, incites insurrection against the United States, and or that conduct is not an impeachable offense, and or that by doing so, that conduct is protected speech under the First Amendment. Now that's what they said. And quite honestly, if you have 43 United States senators who say that trying to incite and actually inciting an insurrection against the United States is protected speech against under the First Amendment, you've already established yourself by saying that you care more about what you think your election result may be, re-election result may be, than you care about the democracy, because there's no law that says what what they said. I happen to have taught constitutional law. I'm a judge. I'm a lawyer. I know a little bit of the Constitution. Quite frankly, Mr. Trump's lawyers were flat wrong on the constitutional law, as was plainly stated by over 100 constitutional scholars from all across the political and ideological spectrum. This wasn't about constitution. This was about character. This was about courage. It was about cowardice. There were 43 cowards. There were 43 people who didn't have the courage, the moral courage, to stand up and say, my country is more important than my political popularity. And when you have 43 senators, almost half the United States Senate, who believe that their own popularity, their own reelectability is more important than the stability of the nation, we have a real problem. But that's not a problem that you can fix by having more witnesses. You've got to have different senators. You've got to make sure that you don't elect people like these 43 who will take an oath to support and defend the Constitution of the United States and then will turn their back on that oath if doing so will give them a good shot at getting campaign for donations or re-election. I think that we can feel confident that Donald Trump will do as much as he can to see as many people as he can get elected office like he behaves. And my final thought is think of what kind of nation the United States will be if you have more people holding public office like Donald Trump. 43 United States senators said, that's a good thing, or it's not a bad thing. That's a problem. Well, I hope this little talk helps you understand at least the jurisdiction issue and why the trial should be recognized as historic because it's the first time a former president has been tried, and it's the first time that so many senators have said that the former president's conduct was worthy of conviction. I hope that you will pray for the nation. I hope you will commend the 57 senators who did the right thing. I hope you will remember the 43 who didn't. I hope you'll remember that our future rests in the hands of all of us, and we have to decide not to elect those people like the 43. I'd rather have more senators who thought like the 57, and I would rather have no senators who think like the 43. Well, I hope this helps. Thank you for listening.